Welcome to this session. We are going to learn gender and development concepts. You would be able to know the various concepts related to gender and development approach, as well as you could able to differentiate among various concepts related to this program. Let me first explain needs and rights. Here, why do we need to know about the needs and rights? Because when we talk about the practical and strategic gender needs, gender planning and policy making, gender mainstreaming, as well as gender budgeting, gender auditing, here those concepts when you learn, first you must know what is needs and rights. Why do we talk about the needs and rights? As well as we must know that specifically why do we talk about women's needs and rights? That is important. You all know that various studies clearly pointed out from 1970s onwards there is a low status of women's conditions and positions. These low status of women's conditions and positions made feminist as well as economist, specifically feminist economist as well as development theorist, they forced to design various development theories as well as feminists intervened all in those development theories, as well as they have brought feminist perspective into the existing development theories, specifically to improve the women's status and position. Based on various feminist development theories, for example, gender and development approach, there are various tools. Once they could able to frame the gender and development approach, based on this gender and development approach, it is important to develop various policies and programs to address the women's issues. Then only once they could able to develop policies and plans by integrating women's issues, then they could able to improve women's status and positions. Specifically, the gender planning concerns the fact that the women and men not only play different roles in the society, but also they have a strategic and practical needs are different. Because due to the existing socialization process as well as patriarchy, the society itself expects the women to play different roles, men to play different roles. When identifying interest, it is useful to differentiate between what is women's interest, what is men's interest, what is strategic gender interest, what is practical gender interest. These are the differentiation one must know to integrate women's needs, men's needs, and as well as other genders' needs in the policies and plans that could able to address these needs specifically in the government policies and programs that will help to improve their status and conditions and their positions also. First, let us learn what is practical and strategic gender needs. After identifying different interests of women, this can be translated into planning needs and their concerns may be satisfied. That is the main reason. First of all, we need to understand that male, female, they are playing a different roles in the society. Why do they play different roles in the society? Due to the existing patriarchy and socialization process. This you must have already clearly read in our coursework itself, because in a simple explanation if I give means, once the child is born, certainly the society expects the child to behave in a certain way, and as well as the society and various social institutions will bring that particular child in a certain way. Based on this existing socialization, their gender roles also differs. Male members, they are expect to perform certain roles. Female, they expect to perform certain roles. Based on their roles, their needs also differs. So it's very important to identify what are all the needs of the girl child or women in the society, what are all the needs of the male child or male members in the society. So once we identify their needs has to be further divided into what are the practical gender needs, what are all strategic gender needs. These differences one need to understand. Practical gender needs means the needs which we need to fulfill for the day-to-day survival. For example, water, housing, clothing, food, fodder, these are all the basic survival needs. That needs to be addressed First, once we address these basic survival needs of the human being, then one could able to talk about the strategic gender needs. That is what Molyneux clearly pointed out, that if we don't fulfill the practical gender needs of the human being, specifically needs of the male and female, then it is difficult to address the strategic gender needs. When we talk about the strategic gender needs, are the needs women identify because of their subordinate position to men in the society. Strategic gender needs vary according to the particular context. It may be differ from country to country, location to location. Within the country also it may differ from one location to other location. When we talk about the strategic gender needs, it's related to gender division of labor, power and control, and equal wages, and women's control over their bodies. Like when we meet the strategic gender needs, when the government start addressing the strategic gender needs of the women, then one could able to, that particular society or the country could able to achieve a greater equality. It also changes existing roles and therefore challenges women's subordinate position. That we need to understand. The practical gender needs are the basic needs, that is for survival of any human being, that could be easily addressed. For example, protected drinking water, good roads. Why do we talk about the good roads? Means if there is a good road with both sides lighting, even during the night time, if you properly put the lights, as well as it's a good public transportation, certainly it will increase the women's mobility and they can also contribute for the economy of the particular country. So drinking water, as well as for example fuel, fodder, housing, these are all the day-to-day survival needs. Food security and access to health facilities, access to schools by the girl children. Then if there is within the 3 kilometers of the radius of their dwelling place, if they get this good schools, then certainly the women could able to, girl children could able to access the school facilities. The women also, they could able to send their children to the schools and their security will be ensured. Then easily they could be mobile. There is no need to travel for longer duration or longer distance to access the school facilities. These are all, whatever I have explained so far, it's a practical gender needs. It could be certainly achieved. Nobody will oppose. When you address these practical gender needs of the human beings, whether it's a male or female and other genders, it won't challenge the existing gender relations. It won't alter the existing power relation. But when it comes to strategic gender needs are the needs women identify because of their subordinate position. For example, if they don't have a control over their resources, specifically land resources, if the land resources in the name of the male members in a particular community, if the government is bringing law that both male and female equally can have an access to family land resources, then certainly the women can also start claiming the family property. That may alter the existing gender relations, that may alter the existing power relations. In this entire process, sometimes male, they feel that they are slowly losing their power. So the conflict may arise. That's why first we have to meet the practical gender needs of the human beings. Once they fulfill the practical gender needs, then they can talk about, the government can bring necessary laws to address the strategic gender needs. Once they address the strategic gender needs, it will challenge the existing women's position, as well as it may alter the existing gender relations. These are the two difference between practical gender needs and strategic gender needs. As I have already mentioned, that practical gender needs are the needs that women identify in their socially accepted roles in the society, because the women they expected to do lots of care activities. So these most of the practical gender needs are related to the care work, caring of the children, caring of the elder, caring of the sick in the family, and fulfilling the needs of the entire family members, cooking and other related activities. Thus, it is addressing these needs are very practical, and it doesn't challenge the existing power relations in the society, unlike strategic gender needs. Next significant terms one must know is that rights. What is rights? So the term women's rights refer to freedoms and entitlements of women and girls of all ages. These rights may not be institutionalized, ignored or suppressed by law, local custom and behavior in a particular society. These liberties are grouped together and differentiated from broader notions of human rights because they often differ from the freedoms inherently. Next significant terms one must understand is that gender mainstreaming. Like we talk about their needs, rights, and how these needs and rights could be integrated into the government policies and programs. Only government could be able to make necessary laws, policies to address the women's needs and rights. So gender mainstreaming is a very significant tool in the public policy concept of assessing the different implications for women and men in any planned policy action, including legislation and programs in all areas and all levels. The concept of gender mainstreaming was first proposed at the 1985 Third World Conference on Women in Nairobi. The idea has been developed in the United Nations Development Community. The idea was formally featured in 1995 at the Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing. Here I would like to explain the definition of gender mainstreaming. Most of the definitions of gender mainstreaming is more or less related to United Nations Economic and Social Council. So United Nations Economic and Social Council formally defined the concept, I quote, mainstreaming a gender perspective is the process of assessing the implications for men and women of any planned action, including legislation, policies or programs in all areas and at all levels. It is a strategy for making women's as well as men's concerns and experiences an integral dimension of the design, implementation, monitoring and evaluation of policies and programs in all political, economic and societal spheres, so that women and men benefit equally and inequality is not perpetuated. The ultimate goal is to achieve gender equality, I unquote. This is if you look at this concept, one could able to derive from this concept that we need to assess whatever the policies, programs, important decisions the government, other organization, institutions they take, it is important to assess those policies and programs, how much these policy, programs, decisions will have an impact on male, female and other genders in the society. That is the first thing we need to assess. For example, if any institutions take certain policies, immediately before implementing those policies, it is important to study how far these particular decisions of the particular institutions or organization can have an impact on male, female in the society. That is the first thing we need to. And implications for men and women in any planned actions, including legislation, policies and programs in all areas and all levels, from central government till local governments, from any national level organization, institutions, subnational level organization, institutions, both public and private institutions. It is important for them to assess before implementing any policies and programs, as well as once they implement certain policies, it is important to monitor and evaluate how much that policy could able to bring a positive impact on male, female, as well as once you start monitoring the certain policies, if there is any deficiencies in the existing policies, that can be evaluated. When we re-implement those policies, whatever the deficiencies, that can be rectified and it can be implemented. So the comprehensive definition of gender mainstreaming clearly pointed out that it is important to assess any planned actions and its impact on male and female before implementing the same among larger audience. That is very important. Next significant terms we all must learn is the literacy gender parity index. When you talk about the literacy gender parity index, is the ratio of the female to male adult literacy rates, which measures progress towards gender equity in literacy and the level of learning opportunities available for women in relation to those available to men. It serves also a significant indicator of the empowerment of women in the society. So literacy is a very significant indicator to know how far the women they could able to achieve. For example, if there is a less percentage of female literacy, certainly we need to identify the whether due to lack of opportunities women they could not able to learn, or what is the main reason for lack of literacy among female members. That is important. One must know that. So literacy gender parity index is a significant indicator of the empowerment of women in the society. Next significant terms we must understand, that all of you must have heard that gender and development. So one must know that what is really a gender and development. Gender and development, which shares the elements with the empowerment approach, gained popularity in the 1980s and attempts to address the loopholes of women in development. It is rooted in the post-development theory and post-structuralist critique in feminism. Gender and development does not consider women as an uniform group. As we all know that, we teach all of you that you cannot consider women as an uniformed group. That is first thing one must understand. Second one is that it maintains that women's situation should be seen in the context of the socio-economic, racial and other factors that shapes a particular society. It also points to the importance of understanding relationship between women and men and how society influence their respective roles. Development to be meaningful will have to take all these factors into consideration. Like we have to see that, see the location, caste, class, intersectionality aspects we need to study to know the women's status and positions. Once we understand that, accordingly we could able to take measures to address the existing inequality. Gender planning. Next significant terms one must understand is that gender planning. Gender planning is the one significant aspects as far as gender and development is concerned. It is a significant tool in the gender and development approach. Gender planning is a recognition of existing gender inequalities in the society and helps to formulate the policies to mitigate the existing gender inequalities in the society. It also, gender planning also aims to improve the status and condition of women by formulating appropriate policies and programs. The existing planning approach treats all as equal. You must be wondering, why do we talk about the gender planning? Because there is a planning exists at all levels, from national, subnational, state level, as well as district level. The planning exists. But why are we insisting on gender planning? That we need to understand. Like existing plan treat all of them equal, but it is not possible to treat all the individuals equally in the society due to the gender differences between male and female. Like male members in the society, it is not for the female to access all the resources. They are not equal like male members in the society. They were not treated equally. It's like lack of access to resources and educational facilities. When it comes to each and every aspects, development aspects, the existing studies as well as data clearly pointed out that the women are lagging behind male members in every development aspects. When they are lagging behind male members in every aspects, it is not possible to treat both of them equally, both the groups equally. So the existing planning approach treats both male and female and everyone in the society equal. That's why the gender planning approach comes into picture. The gender planning helps to expose, analyze and resolve the existing inequalities in socio-economic, cultural, legal and family structures and serves to initiate processes of change to address inequality in such structures and processes. That is, it helps to expose and it helps to analyze what are the inequalities existing at various levels, how do we address those inequalities, what kind of policies and programs we need to formulate to address the existing inequalities. Next significant term is gender budgeting. We must know that we can formulate very good policy programs. Without financial resources, it is not possible to implement those policies and programs. So here the concept of gender budgeting as well as the gender budgeting approach will comes to our mind. Budget is, we all know that budget is one of the most important instruments which reflect the economic policy of the government. Like every government, they present the budget. In that they talk about their income, expenditure and the particular government policies, in which directions they would like to go further. All those explained in detail in every budget. So it's basically when we talk about the budget, it is the government's economic policy. It can also be a powerful tool because the budget only allocate the resources for every sectors. So it considered as a very powerful tool in transforming the economy at different levels of state, district, grassroots levels of the village. It also reflects the choices that government chooses in order to achieve economic and development goals. So gender budgeting has emerged as the new process. In this gender budgeting, it's not about, when we talk about the gender budgeting, it is not about preparing the separate budget for male and female. It is first we need to understand the existing differences and we need to understand the women's status and positions. Accordingly, necessary financial resources needs to be allocated wherever there is a requirement to address the gender issues. That is called the gender budgeting. When we talk about the gender budgeting, as a learner, as a viewer, you must understand that it is not about preparing the separate budget for male and female. It is we have to prepare a budget with the sensitivity towards gender issues. That is called the gender budgeting. And another significant term we need to understand is that gender auditing. Gender auditing is the analysis of a system and process of finance of any government. Gender auditing implies auditing the income and expenditure of the governments from a gender perspective and also analyzing the development process, including the process of legislation, guidelines, taxes and social development projects. It understands that policies have a differential impact on men and women. By recognizing the roles and responsibilities of men in the society on the basis of gender auditing. Gender auditing is one of the aspects of social auditing. You must be heard about the another term, social auditing. Social auditing is we need to audit the existing government programs when it's implemented. Who has benefited out of those government programs, how much they have benefited, what is the gaps in the existing policies. So gender auditing it's one aspect of the social auditing. Next significant term we need to understand is that GDI and GM. Like we all know that gender related development index is the significant index to know the status between men and women. For example, inter-district, interstate and cross-country comparison of women's empowerment is obtained from the gender related development index. When you talk about the gender related development index, it owes its origin to the precursor, that is human development index. In that human development index, there are three main components which are per capita income, educational attainment as well as life expectancy, which is the proxy for health attainment. They usually collect the three significant data from these indicators. They assess, based on their assessment, they bring the report to know the existing status and position of male, female in the society. These are some of the terms today I have explained related to gender sensitive planning and policy making. Hope you have understood these concepts. Thank you so much.